Hey everyone, how are you guys doing today? It is actually a sunny Sunday, rare enough, very exciting. I hope you guys are having a great Sunday and a whole great weekend overall. Yesterday, I went to a presentation that was by KJ Howe. She is a thriller author. I think she's traditionally published. She's really fantastic to talk to, very giving of her time, and she's just really good at what she does. So she was once on the Writer's Edge. I have that link down below if you want to see her on the Writer's Edge. She was presenting at Sisters in Crime, which is a mystery group. And even though I don't write mystery, they have such wonderful presentations, and they're a great group of people. So I'm in that group and I go to all these presentations, and she was on there yesterday. So I took a lot of notes, and her presentations are paid presentations. I'm sure they're part of her income. So I'm only going to share a certain amount of what she said. I'm not looking to, like ruin her income or anything. But anyway, I did want to share some things with you that I think are very interesting and could help if you write about things like, or you're interested in writing about things like kidnapping and ransom. She's done so much research. And one of the resources is actually on her website. I brought it up. You can go to her website and you can go to the page Intel, and that actually has a, excuse me, it has a map on it that has all these different colors that indicate where are some of the most dangerous areas to travel for kidnapping and ransom, kidnap zones, stuff like that, and what are less dangerous. And so that could help you if you're writing some kind of kidnap ransom book, or if that's just part of your novel. Looking at this map and seeing where the most dangerous areas are could be super helpful. And it looks like we all need to live in Greenland or Australia. Those are the safest areas. The US is one of the safer ones, but there are a lot of areas out there that are not so safe. And so one of her messages that was very interesting was, you shouldn't be afraid to travel, but you should know some ways to, not become a target. And there are a lot of really great pieces of advice that she gave. I think that's one of the presentations she offers, staying safe when you travel to these different countries that you may not know too well, or that may be target areas. She's done extensive traveling, many times to places that are not so safe. So she had some great ideas. And some of the things that she was saying, just facts, were that there are 40,000 kidnappings a year across the world, which is really scary, really scary. So she said that there are only 25 to 30 freedom brokers in the world. And I believe that that is a term, like I was trying to take notes while she was speaking, and there was actually so much information that I hope my notes are perfectly accurate, but just note that I was taking them down fast. Anyway, I believe that freedom brokers is her word. And they can be called other things like crisis response consultant, negotiation experts, things like that. But you may see freedom brokers around more because that's, I believe, her term, and her book, one of her 2 books, is named that. So anyway, there are only 25 to 30 freedom brokers in the world, and there's 40,000 kidnappings a year. So that's a little bit scary. It's a good statistic to have if you're writing this kind of stuff. And something that goes along with it was, she was saying the percent chance in different countries that you could be, not that you could be kidnapped. The percent chance in different countries that a kidnapper would be caught, and why. And one of the things, and 2 statistics she gave were, there's a 95% chance in the US that a kidnapper would be caught because of there's such severe consequences to that action. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's a 95% chance in Mexico that you would not be caught as a kidnapper. And that's because of the extreme corruption and the lack of consequences for that action and that crime. So that's an interesting one. And that could help you if you're looking for a place to set your novel that has kidnapping and ransom. That statistic might help you. And on her website, when you go to that Intel page, that'll also help you pick a location pretty well for something to be believable and realistic. So she actually told us a whole story of a former hostage, a hostage victim. And that story was really amazing. The way she tells it, she tells a lot of details, of course, but it was amazing to hear from her. This person spent 946 days in captivity. Terrifying. She said, if you're claustrophobic, you know, it was even worse. It's not like you were just, you know, this guy was just in like some big room or something. You know, he was chained to other people, you know, or handcuffed to someone else, like a lot of the time, kept in small areas, you know. And one of the things she was saying was so important for him to survive that, and he was very fortunate he survived, was staying mentally aware. And you know how I've heard this kind of thing before, and I always wondered why. People in those kinds of situations where they're a hostage, and there's really nothing to occupy their mind at all. It seems very hopeless. There seems to be no way out. Occupying your mind with even like games or building your dream house and all the details of that dream house, she said, down to like how you would stitch the pillows and stuff. Super important to keep yourself mentally aware, keep your just keep your brain sort of moving and not losing that. Like, I don't know if the correct phrase, she'd probably phrase it differently, but like keep your intelligence high, keep your situational awareness high. That's a term she used a lot, situational awareness. And that's one of the things that also would help. She was saying if a kidnapper is looking for someone, if they're seeing someone situationally aware who is not constantly on their phone and not paying attention to where they are and stuff like that, helps you become not a target. But anyway, yeah, making up these games in your head. And there were some interesting things about how to, you know, it's just such a good story when she tells it, and I can't really retell it in the same way, because she interviewed this guy for hours, and she was saying, and she was actually questioning him, sort of not questioning him, but analyzing like what may have prepared him. And he was analyzing too what may have prepared him to survive better. And actually being in the Scouts when he was young was something that helped a lot. Learning different kinds of survival skills and stuff like that was extremely helpful for him. And also trying to humanize. She said there's a thin line between humanizing yourself as the victim who's like trapped with these people, humanizing yourself, and also, but not becoming like, seeming super weak or anything. So you want to come across as human and not just an object, because that's how they see you, as something to be traded. But also not like a super weak person that they could just, I don't know, take advantage of or whatever. So I thought also an interesting part an interesting thing she said was that kidnapping is on the rise in certain areas because one, terrorists are using it as a fundraiser. So since 2009, $125 million have been made through kidnapping. And they see, and one of the things is that these terrorists see humans as a commodity, which is one of the reasons that she was saying humanizing yourself, like trying to, especially once you've spent a ton of time with like your captors. One of the ways of survival that the hostage she had spoken to and done and interviewed thoroughly was after a while, very slowly trying to humanize himself to them, very slowly trying to speak to them in a way that was like, I had a family too, and you have a family, and, trying to just like draw those comparisons between yourself and that person. But, obviously you don't want to go overboard so they get angry. Obviously this is not something that is easy, but it was just interesting when she was saying some of the things, some of the tactics he used to, stay alive in that time. A lot of people were killed around him. Anyway, another reason kidnapping is on the rise is because terrorists have security skills to kidnap people and ransom them, because one of the things is that they don't have enough money to survive. They don't necessarily have a lot of other skills. Like maybe there's a lot of like high unemployment, but security skills is something that there is like a big thing in their country. So the kidnapping and keeping these people like in a secret location or whatever is something they're good at, I guess. I thought it was also interesting when she was describing the different kinds of kidnapping, and she named 4 specific different kinds, and I'll tell you what each of them were. One was virtual kidnapping, one was express kidnapping, one was called tiger kidnapping, and the other one was political kidnapping. So some of these you may know, some of these you may not. Virtual kidnapping is basically when it's fear-mongering, and it's when no one has actually been taken There's no kidnapping has actually taken place. But what these people are trying to do is like, that's when you might get a call from someone you don't know saying, of course you don't know, saying like during the day when your kids are at school or something like that, and maybe you can't get in contact with them easily, or maybe, you know, some of your family is away and you can't get in contact with them. They're trying to find people who can't get in contact with their loved ones, so that when they call you and they say, oh, we have your child, or we have your wife, or whatever, you need to pay this amount of money, and it's going to be a smaller amount of money that is more likely to be able to be paid quickly. And it's going to be in a short amount of time. So not giving them enough time to like get in contact with the person, or not giving them enough time for that person to come home. So it might be like, you have 2 hours to pay, I don't know, $1,000 or maybe $500 or something. So we're not looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're looking at something that hopefully, so they're hoping someone would have in their bank account, and trying to get you to pay it very quickly. And so she was saying, the two things that you need to do is, first of all, stay calm. And obviously that's very difficult in a situation like that, when you are really uncertain. Maybe you can't get in contact with that person. That's what they want. To stay calm and ask for proof of possession or proof of life. And those are the two things to ask for. And one of the ways is that they say, oh, well, that person is being held in another facility, so they're not here right now and they can't speak to you for that reason. You can say, well, I want you to ask them a question, you know, a particular question. And if they answer it, you know, only they would know the answer to this question. If they answer it, then you might know, okay, this is a real thing, or it's not. She said a lot of times if you're staying calm and you're asking these questions, proof of life, proof of possession, they may hang up because they know that you know what you're talking about. So I thought that was a really good tip. But otherwise, you know, asking them to ask this question, you know, that makes a lot of sense. So that's what a virtual kidnapping is and how to handle it. Another one is express kidnapping, which I had never heard of before. And it's basically when they take you off the street immediately, just off the street. They're not planning on holding you. Hi, Rebecca. And what they do is they take you to an ATM right away. And they will take you, the most likely time, there's an actual time for this, is 11:45 at night, that specific time, because they want to take you to the ATM so you can withdraw the max amount you can from your ATM account. And then they want you to do it again at 12:02 a.m. so that you can take out the max amount from your account the next day, you know, because it's technically the next day. And that's it. They just want 2 maximum withdrawals, and that's all they're looking for. Rebecca says, so today we're learning how to supplement our author incomes. Oh boy. Unfortunately, YouTube now actually records those comments, so you're in trouble now. So yeah, Rebecca, I was, you know, talking about what these different types of kidnapping are, because they're interesting to know what is the difference, what is the goal of each one, how do they work. And that could be useful if you're writing like a kidnap ransom type of book, like KJ Howe does. So here's one I had never heard the name of: tiger kidnapping. I had never heard that before. And it's when the person is, it's very specific. The example she gave was like, if you are someone who knows how to make drugs, you're a pharmaceutical person or something like that, you know, you work in a lab. And they kidnap someone close to you, immediate family, husband or kids or something like that. And they ask, what they're looking for is a formula, for these drugs that they can then take and either, I don't know if it's ransom the formula or create those drugs. But anyway, they're looking for someone who knows how to create those drugs. And this is something that's on the rise, apparently. They're looking for those formulas. Pretty interesting. Yeah. Peter Clark says, Colonel Mustard with the lampshade in the library. I think that's pretty much it. So that was interesting. And that's the kind of thing that we see more on like TV shows that I had never really heard about necessarily in real life, but we hear about on those TV shows where they're taking cases from real life. So I hadn't actually read about it in a newspaper or anything, but I thought that was interesting. That could make a really great book, of course. Any of these could, but that in particular probably could make a really complex book. And then, of course, there's political kidnapping, which I think we've all heard of. And nowadays, what it used to be is she was saying that it used to be limited to men usually, and women and children were off limits, and that is no longer the case. And it also used to be limited to certain types of jobs that they were looking for, people with like tons of money, you know, political people who were important or something like that. She's saying now they're taking people like journalists and aid workers. So, you know, that's just an expansion of what political kidnapping is that could maybe help you if you're writing that kind of novel. And they said that, she said, this was so interesting, I didn't know this. In other countries, because the income is so extremely low, they see middle-class people in other countries as super wealthy. So that was interesting. And so that's why even people who don't have major, you know, massive income, wealthy, anything like that, could still be kidnapped for ransom, because they feel that all middle, you know, income or higher, they're still wealthy. A lot of these people are making such a, you know, an extraordinarily low income. Like, I can't remember if she said $40 a week or a month, but either way, that's a rough life, you know? So that's the reason they think that everyone else is wealthy. So I thought that was interesting because it adds that level of detail that you could use. So she was also, one of the interesting things that she said she included in her book, or books. She has two books. One is Freedom Broker and one is Skyjack. I'm really interested to read them, honestly, because these sound really intense. She has a female freedom broker, at least in the first one, probably in the second one, but I just remember more about the first book. And one of the interesting things she had said, and I'm going to relate this back to somebody else who gave similar advice, is she said that she wanted to include chronic illness in her books. She chose diabetes. So that's a more like, I guess you would say, a more common chronic illness, a more recognized common, you know, chronic illness. And that she wanted to show the difficulties of someone who's, you know, in this high intensity, high stress, constantly on the move, maybe, job of a freedom broker who also has this chronic illness and would really need to take care, you know, that they're taking care of it. So she said that one of the reasons was also because it makes this main character more human and more vulnerable, more relatable. I thought that was a great piece of advice. Her books have gotten attention because of that, and because they're just great books, but because of that, because they're very realistic and because they have these chronic illnesses that she represents very realistically. Now, I wanted to relate that back to on the Creative Edge Writers Showcase. I interviewed 2 weeks ago Robert J. Sawyer, and he had said, I asked him, what is the reason that you think your books get nominated for Hugo and Nebula Award? And he wins too. He doesn't just get nominated, he wins, but he's been nominated many times for those awards. He's won many other awards, stuff like that. I said, what is it about your works that makes them win? And he said, one of the reasons is that he always includes a major issue, like a major issue, you know? So whether that is going to be something like a political issue, whether it's going to be a social issue, it could be anything. He said that putting that in there automatically gets you more recognized. And it's also going to help places like newspapers and other news outlets want to cover your book because you're dealing with an issue. This reminded me of that, KJ Howe saying that she put in a chronic illness. It is important that people, like one of the things I notice in a lot of books is that everyone is super healthy, you know, for the most part, and no one has any issues, and, you know, nobody's getting sick, and we never deal with that kind of stuff for the most part. There are books that have that, certainly, that deal with that. You know, John Green does that, and there are many books that do it, but it's not like a super common thing that's in most books, you know? So I thought that between Robert J. Sawyer and KJ Howe, both New York Times bestsellers, both big deals, saying those two things, I thought maybe it would be useful advice for you to hear. So if you're looking for something to add to your book, to add a little bit more dimension and to maybe get it recognized by a wider audience, you may want to consider doing those two things, these different issues or maybe an illness, something like that. So she also gave... I would also recommend to you guys, if you get the chance to see her ever give like one of these amazing presentations, she's really engaging. And like, I mean, I didn't even need the coffee I had. Like I was awake, you know, it was really, really interesting stuff. Fascinating. I didn't know a lot of what she was saying. Not that I've done any research into it myself, but obviously she's done a ton, and she has interviewed like everyone who is part of this kind of a process of hostage negotiations and stuff like that. So if you ever get the chance to see her, I would definitely recommend it. She also does things, presentations on traveling safe. And some of her advice, you've probably heard this one: don't post on social media where you're going before you go there. Post after you've gotten back. And that way people don't know that you're out of your house. You know, it's so easy to locate where people live. All they need to know is that you're gone. And then, you know, it's a common burglary type of thing. I think that's a more common piece of advice. But what was interesting that I don't think I knew this, was that she was saying 200 yards from your home or your work is where you are most likely to be kidnapped. That's interesting. And she was saying, so varying your routine is an important thing, I believe she said. But it's just kind of important to know, so you're always aware. And like, you know, when kidnappers want to, you know, figure out like their whole plan ahead of time, they want to make sure that there are no mistakes. And that's like one of the most important parts of when they're, of course, executing this whole thing. That's the most tense time for them. And so they're going to be planning really, really carefully. And if they're like, you know, looking for someone, I don't know, who's in a, I don't know, expensive area or something, and you're always walking around like on your phone or something, not paying attention, you might be their target, right? So it's important that you look situationally aware. That's the kind of thing that she was saying. They're less likely to target someone who looks like they're actually paying attention and knows where they are, and, you know, stuff like that. One of the interesting things she said is, if, of course, like if you travel in a group, that is much more safe. But if you are traveling alone, which she likes to do a lot, she was saying that it's important to mention, even just to, I guess, hotel, like the person who's checking you into the hotel, or anyone else, just anyone, just mentioning that people are waiting for you, or waiting to hear from you, or you're going to be meeting someone or whatever. And she was saying that that can be important because it just proves that you're not alone, even though you're checked into a hotel alone. Like, people are aware of where you are, and someone is waiting for you. And if you don't show up, obviously they're going to know something went wrong. So that was a good piece of advice. And another thing she said was that she said this is more expensive, but it's a piece of advice she would recommend, to ask a hotel to provide a trusted driver instead of going for a taxi. She said it's more expensive, but it's way more safe, because a lot of times, you know, you don't know who these taxi drivers are, and you never know who taxi drivers are. And she was careful to say that there are plenty of, you know, taxi drivers who are fine, but if you're in a country you don't know, it's even like more confusing. Maybe you don't even know the language that well. You don't know like what they're saying or anything. And so she was saying that it's I had heard a number of stories, even from people I work with, about like kidnapping in different countries through like a cab or a taxi. And it's not even necessarily that the person who's driving is like the person who wants to do the kidnapping. They can be either paid to do what they're doing, or they can be, there's a lot of ways they can be persuaded to do that kind of thing. So I've actually heard firsthand stories of that happening. And so when she said that, I was like, oh yeah, I know, I've heard of that. And like from people I know. So that was an interesting thing. There is a lot more she talked about. You guys should definitely check her out. She's really fantastic in general. She's going to be on my Facebook my Facebook, not author page, but my main page where you can add me as a friend. We're going to talk about Thriller Fest. She's the executive director of that. That's a major book expo or con that happens once a year, I believe, in New York City. And Rebecca is saying, that makes kids super easy to kidnap. School hours of public information. That's very true. She says, I do that. I always schedule my rides with the hotel and let home know that's how I travel. Yeah, absolutely. You're doing it right, Rebecca. KJ would be proud. That's perfect. So anyway, if you're not friends with me on Facebook, add me. I will be doing a video with KJ soon. I'll let you know when that's going to happen. And she's going to tell us all about Thriller Fest and who would want to attend that, who it's good for, what exactly is going to be at that, what you can look forward to. I think it's going to be really interesting. So add me on Facebook. And thank you guys so much for coming. As always, I hope this was interesting for you. I hope it was informative in case you were thinking of writing that kind of book. And I hope you found out some facts that might have been either harder to research or you just didn't know or just found interesting. So as always, thank you so much for spending time with me, and I'll see you soon.